Chen Pingan brought water back to Liu Xianyang's yard, poured it into the kitchen tank, then ran to the door and shouted, Liu Xianyang, I'll use your firewood, oil and salt to make up for Miss Ning's stewed fish soup. Body? Okay. Liu Xianyang, who had fallen asleep and returned to the cage, was woken up and roared, Chen, are you bothered? I just dreamed that Jigui smiled at me. Give me a Jigui. Chen Pingan shook his head, remembered something, and apologized. I really met Jigui at the Ironlock Well just now, but I was interrupted by Granny Ma and forgot to send you a message. I'll go to Ning later. When the girl delivers the fish soup, I promise to help you with the words. Liu Xianyang kicked a carp, quickly put on his clothes, ran to the threshold outside the main room and sat down. Looking at the emaciated figure busy in the kitchen, he smiled and said, Wait, I'll bring the fish soup with you. By the way, did Jiggy wear that bright red pomegranate dress today? Or the light green one? Well, when I save another pennies, I can buy that silver powder box with more than Nian Long. I know she likes it. It's been a long time, but I'm reluctant to buy it. It's all my fault for Song Jiksen, that stinky, poor, and stingy, who dresses like a cat and a dog from Fulu Street. Poor Jiggy doesn't have many new clothes all year round, so I'm her young master. I promise to let her buy whatever she likes, and be richer than the daughter of Fulu Street. To be the eldest Miss Wanjin? Chen Pingan ignored Liu Xianyang's crazy dreams. He really didn't understand why Liu Xianyang liked Jigui. Of course, it wasn't that he looked down on her as Songji's maidservant, nor did he think that Jigui was not good looking, but he always felt that she was with Liu Xianyang. It doesn't look like a marriage, Chen Pingan asked curiously. Why do you call her Jigui instead of Wang Ju? Liu Xianyang grinned and said, I know that you don't know how to write the word Jigui. Then I don't care, Chen Pingan said helplessly. What's the use of you compared with me? Compared with Songji's salary? Jigui is not my maid. Liu Xianyang sneered and said, That guy isn't better than you in every way. For example, who has he called father and mother in his life? No. Isn't it better than you? Chen Pingan. No wonder Guchan's mother. There are also mother-in-law Ma and those mother-in-laws who have poisonous mouths. Song Jiksen, who is not a pure and innocent family. Otherwise, why not live in that supervising government office? But go to your mud bottle alley to suffer. Days. How dare this guy like dogs to look down on people? So he deserves to throw dirty water on people and scold wild breeds. Chen Pingan stood up and walked to the door of the kitchen. Liu Xianyang, although Song Jiksen and I are not friends at all. But you say that. Liu Xianyang hurriedly raised his hands, determined not to let Chen Pingan continue to ramble, and said slyly, I won't say it. Okay, Chen Pingan, you have a bad temper. Who do you want? My grandfather said, Your parents. Everyone is good at talking. Especially your mother, who speaks softly and likes to laugh. Her temper is so good that she has nothing to say. My grandfather also said that in the early years, mother-in-law Ma almost scolded people in the nearby alleys. But only seeing your mother. Not only icky, she's not picky, but she also has a smile on her face. Chen Pingan laughed hard. Liu Xianyang waved his hand to chase people away. Hurry up and make soup for your little daughter-in-law. Chen Pingan rolled his eyes. If you have the ability, say it in front of Miss Ning. Liu Xianyang smiled and said, You're stupid. But I'm not stupid. Soon after, Chen Pingan held out a small pottery pot, and the two locked the door of the house and courtyard and walked towards Mud Bottle Alley together. When he arrived at the door of Chen Pingan courtyard and saw him knocking on the door stupidly, Liu Xianyang realized that this guy had left all the house keys to the girl in black. Liu Xianyang felt that this guy was really hopeless. The black-clothed girl didn't wear a hat when she was at home, but when she opened the door, she showed a fresh face. Liu Xianyang was a little afraid of this unsmiling girl. The tall boy didn't even know the reason. Even more than that, Liu Xianyang has the same courage and shameless faith. If it is because the girl in black hangs the sword, it is not right. Even if Liu Xianyang confronts the children of Gaoliang on Fulu Street, even if he chases and blocks them a few times, he flees like a bereaved dog. But the young man is not. In fact, I didn't panic from the beginning to the end, but he was a little bit afraid of a foreign girl named Ning Yao. The girl in black sat at the table and opened the jar. After smelling the fragrance, she narrowed her long and narrow eyes slightly, nodded and said softly, Thank you. Chen Pingan's observation was meticulous, and he knew that this should mean that the indifferent girl was in a good mood. Chen Pingan helped her cook a pot of porridge and let her pay attention to the heat, and then said to Liu Xianyang, You wait for Jiggy to go out by yourself. I have to deliver the letter. Liu Xianyang was sitting on the threshold, pricked up his ears to listen to the movement over there, lest he would hear a bit of a fight between gods and gods. The tall boy who was in a bad mood said impatiently, You are busy. When Chen Pingan left the yard and was about to reach the intersection of Mud Bottle Alley, he suddenly found that the vision in front of him had dimmed. When he looked up, it turned out to be a tall man in a snow-white robe on the white jade belt. Look into the distance. Probably realizing that he was blocking the path of the narrow alley, the man smiled slightly and took the initiative to make way for Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan was full of doubts, quickened his pace, and left the Mud Bottle Alley. Looking back, the man had slowly entered the Mud Bottle Alley. Even at a glance, Chen Pingan saw that on the spotless snow-white robe, there were thin gold threads embroidered on the front, back and back, vaguely forming two patterns, as if there were living creatures wandering around. Among the mountains, fog and clouds, it is very wonderful. Chen Pingan didn't think about it anymore. He just thought that he was a foreigner like Funan Hua, and he was going to Nipingxiang again to find an opportunity after walking through the bottom of the old locust tree with Mr. He that day. The straw shoe boy was not too worried. He always felt that as long as Mr. He was in the town, he would take 10,000 steps back and say that even if something really happened, he would be able to ask for someone justice. When Chen Ping'an trotted past Xinghua Alley, he saw the girl in Qingyi he met last night, sitting at a wonton shop there, with a chopstick in each hand, standing on the table, tapping lightly. The whole picture was slightly childish and fat. Her round face was full of energy. Her eyes were full of wontons being boiled in the hot pot over there. And she didn't notice Chen Ping'an, who was 5 or 6 steps away. For the girls in Qingyi, when the food is falling, they have to finish eating before running away. Chen Ping'an admired the strange girl sincerely, did not disturb her, smiled and continued to run to the east of the town. Some people and things, even the scenery along the road, can still make people feel very beautiful just by looking at them. When Chen Ping'an came to the east fence gate, the sloppy man stood on the stump, tiptoed and looked east, as if waiting for someone important. Chen Ping'an used to listen to the old people chatting at the old locust tree, and said that when the current superintendent entered the town for the first time, there was a lot of ostentation. Pick up at the east gate of the city. But after waiting for a few hours under the sun, the last officer of the government office ran to the east gate in a hurry, saying that the superintendent had just woken up from a nap in the backyard of the government office, and asked everyone to go directly. The meeting with the government office is to make those rich and noble men so angry that one Buddha was born and 2 Buddhas ascended to heaven. However, it is said that after entering the gate of the government office, no one dared to fart. One by one who smiled like a good grandson. Chen Ping'an has always been surprised. Those old people said it as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Every time they talked about the gossip on Fulu Street and Taoye Lane, it was more true than the truth. For example, the second aunt of the Liu family and the nursing home. The teacher became a good friend, and when someone broke the door, even the second aunt, in a panic, said a lot of details about how to pack up her clothes to cover her plump breasts. The head teacher himself, Liu Shenyang, was drooling every time he heard it. Song Jixin also went there occasionally. He didn't bring Jigui and smiled more implicitly than Liu Shenyang. But when he was secretly coaxing with everyone, he worked extra hard and read the Book of Sages twice in the morning and evening. Be louder. Chen Ping'an squatted beside the tree stump, waiting patiently for the town janitor. The man scolded his mother, jumped off the stump, and after seeing the boy with straw sandals, he did not speak, and went to the yellow mud-thatched hut to get a stack of letters. 6 letters from the family, and only 5 copper coins of 1 penny. Chen Ping Ontario turned over the letter address, but didn't say anything, because there were 2 letters from the next-door neighbor on Fulu Street, and Chen Ping'an was unwilling to take advantage of it. Of course, if a man had an unprecedented kindness, he would have given 6 cents of money at first. Chen Ping'an will never push money out. After Chen Ping'an thought about the order of delivery, he asked casually, "Wait for someone?" The man glanced at the spacious avenue to the east and said angrily, "Wait for uncle." Chen Ping'an didn't want to stay and be a punching bag, so he ran away. The man laughed angrily. "Yo, he still has some eyesight." The man glanced at the sky, and the sound of the rolling thunder was long gone, and the low-hanging clouds that seemed to be almost pressing down on the eaves had gradually dissipated. The man sat down on the stump and sighed. When gods fight, mortals suffer. There are 6 letters, 1 for each of the 4 surnames Liu, Li, Zhao, and Song from Fulu Street, and 2 in Taoye Lane. Coincidentally, one of them was the letter from the kind old man before, and it was a coincidence that he opened the door. The person who received the letter was still an old man. After seeing Chen Ping'an, the old man recognized the straw shoe boy and joked, "Child, you really don't want to come in for a drink?" Chen Ping'an smiled shyly and shook his head. The old man was not surprised. He just took out a handful of copper coins from his sleeve and handed it to Chen Ping'an. He smiled and explained, "Today there is something good at home. This little bit of money is good for those who see it. It's just for luck. Not much, just 10 a few pennies. So you can take it with confidence." Chen Ping'an just took the copper coins and said with a smile, "Thank you, Grandpa Wei." The old man nodded and suddenly said, "Child, recently, when you have nothing to do, you can often go to sit under the locust tree. And if you see locust leaves, locust branches, etc., on the ground, you can take it home and put it there to prevent ants. The centipedes, how good it is, and you don't have to spend money." Chen Ping'an bowed to the old man at the bottom of the steps. The old man Shin smiled. "Go! Go!" Spring is the plan of the year. It must be a good thing for young people to exercise their muscles and bones more. The teenager ran away from Taoye Lane on the Bluestone Street. The old man stood at the door of the house for a long time, looking at the peach trees on both sides. A graceful young maid came to the old man and whispered, "Ancestor, what are you looking at? It's cold outside. Don't freeze." The maid has been serving the old man for several years, knowing that the old ancestor is a bodhisattva, and the young girl has no fear of the old man. She smiled and asked playfully, "The old ancestor? Did you remember the girl you met when you were young?" That girl was at that time standing under the peach tree. The white-haired old man smiled and said, "Taoya, you are also a caring person, just like that young messenger." The maid was praised and smiled charmingly. The old man suddenly smiled and said, "A distant relative is coming to visit in the past 2 days. When the time comes, Taoya, you will follow the children at home and leave the town together." The maid was stunned for a while. Her eyes suddenly turned red, and she cried, "Old ancestor, I don't want to leave here." The old man who has always been very talkative, waved his hand. I'll watch the scenery of the alley for a while. You go back first. Taoya! Be obedient. Otherwise I will be angry. The maid had to leave timidly. Turning back 3 steps, the peach leaves in Taoya Lane are lush, but there are no peach blossoms. The old man let out a soft breath, crossed the threshold, walked down the steps, walked to the nearest peach tree, stood under the tree. The old man said sadly, "The peach is young. It's scorching. I really will never see you again." Reached, the old man glanced back at his house and murmured, "The small town is blessed by nature. It is not in line with the avenue. It was changed by the sages and enjoyed a full 3,000 years of great luck. People who have walked out of the small town in the past are mostly in the entire East Aquarius. The island is blooming, but God is so shrewd. So it's time to settle accounts after the autumn and collect our rewards. You children, don't get out of here quickly. Don't you follow our broken old porcelain and wait to die together? You know, death is divided into big and small. There are thousands of people in our small town. This death is a big death, and even the next life is gone. So, now, while God is still opening one eye and closing one eye, one more person can be one person." The old man stretched out his dry palm and supported the peach branch. "There are people who have a heart and a heart. I hope I can live up to this. I don't know when." The grandmother of the young scholar Zhao Yao. The old woman leaning on crutches has approached here. The old man who is about to go into the ground is so innocent, like an old lady smearing rouge. It is really disgusting. Disaster. Is it your kindness that can change the slightest? The old man's eyes were a little dazed, looking at the old woman with the same snow-white head. He inexplicably said, "You're here." The old woman was stunned for a moment, then immediately became angry, and hit her with a cane. "You shy thief! You are so old. How dare you talk about it?" The crutches rained down on him, and the old man had to run away, but laughed. The old woman stood under the peach tree, still annoyed, regretting that she should not be soft-hearted, and she made a trip to Peach Leaf Lane. Finally, the old woman raised her head and looked at the peach leaves that were pulling out their buds. The old woman walked back to Fulu Street step by step, and the crutches tapped again and again on the bluestone slab. A peaceful town that has been prosperous for thousands of years. I never thought that in the end, there are all poor people who have no afterlife. Is there really no chance of life? The water of the stream is getting shallower. The water of the well is getting colder. The old locust tree is getting older. The iron lock is rusted, and the big cloud is low. This year, the peach leaves will not be able to see peach blossoms. Chen Pingyan once again saw the girl in Xing Yi, who was silently following behind a middle-aged man, nibbling on a scallion egg pancake with her head down. The man looked unlovable. After seeing Chen Pingyan, the man stopped and asked, "Are you the guy I drove away last time?" The man's back was knocked heavily, and the girl in Xing Yi, who hit the wall, raised her head with a dazed look, and suddenly saw Chen Pingyan. She was about to laugh, but suddenly turned her back to Chen Pingyan, and the girl hurriedly wiped the corners of her mouth. Chen Pingyan restrained his smile, nodded to the man and said, "Hello, Master Ruin." It seemed that the girl was probably Master Ruin's daughter, but the looks of the father and daughter are really similar. Unfortunately, they do not. The man Chen Pingyan, called Master Ron, was the blacksmith who moved to the south side of the small stream not long after he arrived in the town. He continued to ask, "Why didn't Liu Xianyang strike for the past 2 days?" Just as Chen Pingyan was about to explain to Liu Xianyang, the man said coldly, "Go and tell that boy, if you don't see his uncle's face again today, you won't have to go to my shop tomorrow." Chen Pingyan hurriedly said, "Master Ruin." Something urgent happened at his home. The man interrupted the boy and said rudely, "That's his business, not my business." Chen Pingyan was not a person who was good at words. He was stunned on the spot, his face flushed with anxiety, and he didn't know how to speak. For fear that he would be doing a disservice, Master Ruin's straightforward temper. He has personally experienced it. The girl in Qingyi tried to say something nice to Chen Pingyan, but was taught a lesson in advance by a man who knew her daughter Mo Ruofu. "Eat your cake." The girl, who was full of grievances, suddenly quickened her pace, stepped on the man's instep, and then the wind was blowing under her feet, and she disappeared in an instant. The man sighed, put Chen Pingyan aside, and moved on. Chen Pingyan also sighed, ran to the early shop to buy a basket of 6 buns, and rushed to Mud Bottle Alley. When he arrived at his house, he saw Liu Xianyang squatting on the top of the wall, half of his body leaning towards Song Jixin's yard, eavesdropping attentively. Chen Pingyan also sometimes felt that Liu Xianyang was indeed quite rude. He had to remind, "I saw Master Ruin just now, and asked you to go to the blacksmith shop to help today, and said that if I didn't see you today, I would dismiss you." Liu Xianyang absent-mindedly said, "What's the hurry? An apprentice like me, who is quick-witted and hard-working, is hard to find, even with a lantern. If Master Ruin is ruthless, it doesn't matter if he goes again tomorrow." Chen Pingyan shook his head and said, "I'm sure Master Ruin is definitely not joking." Liu Xianyang said irritably, "I'll go later. Don't delay my work." Chen Pingyan brought breakfast to the black-clothed girl, and directly took 3 for Liu Xianyang, and he only bit one. Liu Xianyang took care of all the meat buns in 2 or 3 strokes, and whispered while wiping his mouth. Just now there was a guest from Song Jixin's family. He is a big man who can be seen at first glance, if I read correctly. He should be the current official kiln, Lord Supervisor. That time when he wore an official uniform to our dragon kiln. Old man Yao thought, "You bunch of incompetent apprentices were an eyesore." So he didn't let you show up to gain insight. A grown-up demonstrate what a jump knife is. Chen Pingyan smiled and said, The new inspector takes care of Song Jiksen. It's something everyone in the town knows. What are you doing here with suspicion? Liu Xianyang said worriedly. Song Jiksen's little white face can never compete with me. But if Jiggy falls in love with this extraordinary official, my chances of winning are not great. Then your future sister-in-law will be with you. People run away. What should I do? What should you do? Chen Ping'an walked directly back to the house, leaving Liu Xianyang squatting on the wall and feeling sorry for himself. The black-clothed girl sat at the table with her waist straight, holding the hilt of the knife in one hand, as if she was facing a great enemy. Sweat oozes from her forehead. This is the first time Chen Ping'an has seen a girl with such an expression. Although her body is tense and alert, her eyes are bright and eager to try. Chen Ping'an returned to the threshold, and she asked, "Do you know the identity of the guest next door?" Chen Ping'an replied, "I heard Liu Xianyang say that he is the current kiln supervisor in our town. He is very friendly. He was at the alley just now and gave way to me." The girl sneered. This kind of talent is terrible. Chen Ping'an was puzzled. She asked, would people step on a foot when they saw an ant while walking on the side of the road? Chen Ping'an thought about it and replied, Gukhan definitely does. He often uses water to water the ant nest or blocks the way out of the ant nest with stones. When Liu Xianyang is in a bad mood, he probably will. The girl in black was speechless. Chen Ping'an grinned. In fact, I understand what Miss Ning means. She was surprised. Really? Chen Ping'an nodded and said, I think girl. You mean two things. One means the people of our town. In the eyes of you outsiders, they are all ants crawling around on the soles of their feet. The second means among outsiders, and it is divided into high and low. Funanhua Caijinjin is a child like Gutang, and it will be interesting to master the life and death of ants, or it will be annoying. But the official who came to our mud bottle alley is different. He talks and does things differently. We'll match his identity, so he is very polite. Miss Ning, right? The girl asked, how did you figure it out? The young man joked and replied, after returning from his life, it seems that his mind has become a little brighter. The girl in black asked solemnly, what did you see before you died? I didn't see anything. Chen Ping'an was a little puzzled, but he still answered honestly. Actually, I didn't think much about that alley from beginning to end. It's better for Miss Ning to ask Funanhua and Kai Jinjian about this question. They might see something. She snorted coldly. Yo, what a big tone. After saying this, she had no reason to stare at the boy with straw sandals. Chen Ping'an was flustered. What's wrong? The girl frowned, a little annoyed, and said to herself in the dialect of her hometown, my family's swordsmanship. Whether it is the technique of swordsmanship or the method used to temper the body and soul is a unique secret that is not taught. I haven't learned everything. How dare I teach others? And I haven't learned the superficial things in other places. Otherwise, I can give him a clear way. Even if it is only used to strengthen the body and prolong life, where can I find this entry-level cheat book with the lowest threshold? The girl's eyes lit up. Robbery. No, it's not a robbery. It's to find someone to borrow a cheat book. If you borrow it, you can return it. Unfortunately, she quickly turned gloomy and said bitterly, damn old eunuch, wait for me, and see if I don't turn your palace upside down. With a sad face, she said sadly, could it be that I can only go to the swordsmith surnamed Ruin? I can make do with killing people. I have 4 or 5 points of my mother's true inheritance, but I'm really not good at asking for help. The boy with straw sandals sat on the threshold, looking at the girl named Ning Yao. She was talking to herself. Her face was changing, like a cloud in the sky. The handsome man in the white robe and jade belt stood in Song Jiksen's room, looked around, frowned slightly. Did he arrange such a shabby place for you with the surname Song? Song Jiksen pursed his lips and did not speak. The maid, Jigui, has long since hid in her side room. According to the most widely circulated statement in the town, the former inspector, Mr. Song, was not skilled in his business and failed to create a royal tribute porcelain that satisfied the court. With that little hard work, he left a covered bridge and returned to Beijing to take up his post. Of course, Song Jiksen, an illegitimate son, was also left, and he only bought him a personal maid to take care of his daily life, and then entrusted the orphan to his friend. That is, the new superintendent who took his place? I heard that his surname was Song, but what the truth is. The authorities are fascinated, and bystanders may not know. Song Jiksen himself didn't know what the relationship between this guy and the man surnamed Song was. A colleague in the officialdom who was inseparable. Classmates and friends who were studying in the past, or the opponents of other hilltop factions in the temples of the capital. Before the surname Song left, he mentioned a few words, saying that after the new inspector arrives in the town, he will soon take their master and servant 2 out of the town and rush to the capital. To the adult, he asked Song Jiksen to pay extremely respectful. Without the slightest negligence, Song Jiksen didn't have the slightest sympathy for the man in front of him in the capital, probably because he hated Wu Jiwu. The confidence he showed on the side of his handmaid Jigui, and the calmness of leaving his hometown next, was just a result of the young man's self-esteem. The man smiled and said, forget it. The sour scholar surnamed Song has always been a cautious character. He's not like a big man, but a bitch. Otherwise, he wouldn't be allowed to come here to look after you. Song Jiksen's eyebrows were gloomy. The man casually glanced at the large box where the young man was storing his belongings, pouted his lips, looked dismissive. and said slowly, "Before I came here, I have already met Fu Nanhua of the old Longcheng. He is really unlucky, and he will almost be here. Dao heart is broken. Your business with him will continue as usual. You are self-sufficient, and I will not get involved in this rubbish thing the size of sesame and mung bean. But before you leave, you must go to the covered bridge with me and knock a few times. You will have nothing to do with you after that. Go home with me. Do what you should do. Sit in the seat you should sit in, and do your duty. It's that simple. Do you understand?" "Of course I understand." Master Song's words are not obscure. The boy sneered. "Just why?" The man smiled, turned to face the boy for the first time, and asked back, "The sissy surnamed Song said that you are extremely talented, and this evaluation is really not afraid of flashing her tongue. You might as well guess. Why do you think I am?" If you look closely, you will find that there are some similarities between the two. Song Jiksen was even more angry, but he never let it out. The man no longer sells off and plays with his taste. Why? Of course, because this king is a big unlucky child. He will be your uncle's uncle. Song Jiksen was shocked and his face paled. The white-robed man turned a blind eye to this, held the jade belt with both hands, looked at the sky outside the window, and said with a smile, "It's also because I am the known one martial arts of the Dali dynasty." In fact, this sentence is replaced by another statement, which is even more shocking. But a man would rather be a chicken head than a phoenix tail, and feel that as long as he is behind other, even if it is only 1 or 2 people behind, it is not worth promoting at all. The man thought of the Confucian saint sitting here. His mouth was full of contempt, and he snorted coldly. He was thinking, if it weren't for this world, Lao Tzu would be able to slaughter the immortals of the 3 religions like Qi Jingchun with one hand, inside the thatched hut of the school. Mr. Che was listening to the sounds of the Mongolian schoolchildren's books. Sit upright. In the true sense of sitting upright, it is difficult for Song Jiksen and Zhao Yao, the seeds of reading, to appreciate its essence. In Confucianism, there is a classic of establishing a religion and opening a sect called the Great Rites, in which self-cultivation has a special mention that a gentleman should sit like a corpse because the corpse is an idol, sitting like a corpse. It is solemn and solemn. One can imagine and know. At this moment, Qi Jingchun seemed to have heard the white-robed man's thoughts silently in his heart, and said with a light smile, "Wu Fu is in charge of the country. It's incredible." However, the white dragonfish suit is not a good omen. The sound of footsteps came from Song Jiksen's door. Liu Shanyang was about to jump off the wall, but he didn't see him. He heard his voice first, and someone asked with a warm smile, "Are you Old Man Yao from Baoxi Kiln?" "As apprentice, surnamed Liu." It was the kiln inspector who was wearing a white coat and a jade belt tied around his waist. He strode out of the threshold and looked towards the wall with a smile on his face. Liu Shanyang's body stiffened, and found that he didn't have the strength to jump off the wall. He smiled guilty and said, "If you go back to the Lord, it's me." When the Lord went to our long kiln to open the kiln, the master asked me to demonstrate a few things to the Lord. The man nodded, looked at the tall young man, and asked straight to the point, "Young man, do you want to go outside and take a look? For example, join the army and fight. I guarantee that as long as you survive for 10 years, you can become a high-ranking official. When that time comes, I will personally give you a drink in the capital to celebrate. How about that?" Song Jiksen, who was standing behind the man, had a gloomy expression on his face and clenched the old dragoncloth rain jade pendant that Fu Nanhua had given him. This reading seat, who has held the titles of illegitimate child and wild seed for many years, now knows the true identity of the man around him. So the young man understands the weight of the words of the man better. It will be a Dali's most powerful life-saving charm, and the longest Qingyun ladder in the officialdom. Liu Xianyang racked his brains to come up with some sour and vinegary words, and stammered, "Thank you for your love." The superintendent, "I am very frightened. It's just that the young man has promised to be an apprentice at Master Ruin's blacksmith shop. I hope you don't, adults don't count." What the tall boy wanted to say suddenly stuck in his throat, and he couldn't remember life or death. His face flushed with anxiety. Song Jiksen reminded, seemingly empathetic, "It's the adults who don't remember the deeds of the villains." The man in white robes smiled and ignored it. "It's okay. When you have a chance to leave the town one day, you can go to the nearest Danyang mountain pass and find a warrior named Liu Lingxi, saying that Song Changjing in the capital recommended you to join the army here. If he doesn't believe it, you just told him about the man named Song Changjing, that you, Liu Lingxi, still owe him, heads of the great Sui Bianchi." Liu Shanyang nodded and said, "Okay." The man smiled and left, and Song Jiksen wanted to stop when he arrived at the gate of the hospital. The man seemed to have lost his mind, and said without turning his head, "Follow me to the superintendent's office, and I will show you someone." Song Jiksen's feet were rooted to the ground like nails, and he said with a dark face, "I'm not going." The place with a very high threshold for the people of the small town, for the young man who grew up listening to gossip and rumors year after year. It is a dragon pool in a tiger's den, and it is an insurmountable heart. The man who has always acted resolutely outside, did not annoy the young man's lack of understanding of the current affairs, nor stopped his pace, but slowed down a lot. According to the records of the spy's eyeliner of the government office, you have already met the prince of the Sui dynasty, surnamed Gao, right? Do you know that the Gao family of the Sui dynasty and our Dali Song family are thousands of years old enemies who share a mortal hatred? They are also princes. He dares to come to this small town located in the hinterland of the enemy country Dali, and Yu Song Jiksen is also a prince, but dare not go to a small official residence on the territory of his own family. Song Jackson didn't chew on the deep meaning of these words for the first time, but turned his head to look at Liu Shangyang, and saw the tall boy sitting on the wall rubbing his hands and legs, as if he didn't hear the man at all. The corner of the mouth of the prince in the white robe of Dali, who was walking in the mud bottle alley, twitched, and the man got a little unexpected joy. It is indeed the seed of our old Song family. However, when he thought that the young man was still the son of that woman, as the powerful king of Dali's first martial arts master, he felt a little disturbed and troubled. Song Jiksen gritted his teeth, turned around and said to Jigui, who was standing at the door of the house, "I'll go back when I go. Don't worry about me for lunch." Just as Song Jiksen walked out of the courtyard, he turned his head and smiled and said, "Take the pocket of broken money by my bed and go to the Du family shop to buy the pair of Dragon and Phoenix fragrances. Anyway, we won't have to save money in the future." Jigui nodded and made a careful mute gesture. Song Jiksen smiled happily and left gracefully. When Song Jiksen walked away, Liu Shangyang, who was sitting on the wall, asked cautiously, "Jigui, what is the relationship between Song Jiksen and the inspector?" Chikyu looked at the tall boy with pity. Liu Shangyang couldn't stand her gaze the most. "What are you doing? You just know an official who is in charge of firing porcelain. Is it amazing?" Jigui twitched the corners of his mouth and went back to the house to get food, and started feeding the old hen and the fluffy chicks. Liu Shangyang felt disheartened for no reason, jumped off the wall and shouted into the house, "Chen, let's go to the blacksmith shop." "Don't be so useless." The girl turned her back to the yard next door, separated by a wall, and said with a laugh, "Buddha fights for a stick of incense, and people fight for a breath. But it's a pity that a useless person only has a stomach full of fuss." Liu Shangyang's blood surged up. His ears turned red. He walked to the yellow mud wall and slammed his fist on the wall. "Wangja, say it again if you have the ability." The maid threw away all the corn and vegetable leaves, clapped her hands, turned her head and said with a smile, "Who do you think you are? Let me just say it." Liu Shangyang looked at the girl who was drawing a bar, more and more bright and moving, speechless, and her heart was empty, like a porcelain bowl in her heart that fell to the ground. In fact, Chen Ping'an was already standing on the threshold. After seeing this scene, he walked quickly to the yard and said softly, "Let's go." The two teenagers were walking side by side in the alley, and the tall teenager suddenly asked, "Chen Ping'an, am I very hopeless?" Chen Ping'an thought about it and said seriously, "The neighbors in the alley all say that my mother is very good, and they also say that my father is notoriously boring, so I think it has nothing to do with who I like or not." So big. Liu Shangyang grimaced. "Then I'm even worse. Even if I work hard to build a dragon kiln in the future, or learn Master Ruin's craftsmanship, doesn't she also dislike me?" Chen Ping'an kept his mouth shut so as not to add fuel to the fire. Chen Ping'an was walking in a familiar alley, and suddenly remembered a scene. In his early years, he followed Old Man Yao into the deep mountains along the stream. He saw a small elk drinking water by the water. He was not afraid when he saw him. Looking at the stream, he did not leave for a long time. In addition to the reflection of the elk on the water surface of the stream, there is also a swimming fish lingering in the water. Before walking out of the ancestral house, Miss Ning suggested that since he had a pagoda tree leaf, he should leave the town early. With the invisible shelter of the pagoda tree leaf and the ancestral shade, there would be no major accidents, and it was best not to stay too long in the town, for a long time, because she didn't know whether Liu Shangyang's matter would affect him and Chen Ping'an. But Chen Ping'an insisted on seeing Liu Shangyang accepted as an apprentice by Master Ruin with his own eyes before he could leave with peace of mind. Because there was no Liu Shangyang back then. He would have starved to death long ago, of course. Chen Ping'an also hoped that the girl Ning could heal her injury at his house, but the boy didn't dare to say it. For fear that she would think it was frivolous, Chen Ping'an suddenly asked, "Isn't that treasure armor that your grandfather left to you never sold to outsiders?" Liu Shangyang said with a straight face, "Nonsense. Of course I won't sell it if I die." He punched the boy next to him on the shoulder and joked, "I'm not a money fan like you." The tall boy clasped the back of his head with both hands. Some things are temporarily unavailable and can be earned with money. But when some things are gone, they will really be gone in this life. Chen Ping'an said to himself, "Understood." When he was about to reach the entrance of Mud Bottle Alley, Liu Shangyang uttered a foul language, and Chen Ping'an put away his thoughts and looked up, suddenly feeling a little heavy. It was Liu Zhengchun, the eldest son of the Liu family from Fulu Street. Back then, he was the one who brought a group of friends to block Liu Shangyang in this alley, and almost beat him to death. Liu Shangyang, who has no elder relatives, is afraid that he will really be thrown into the mass grave. Song Jiksen was squatting on the wall to watch the excitement, and he kept making waves, and then told Chen Ping'an, who had lingering fears, that Liu Zhengchun's behavior was called being a man of anger outside the town. Liu Zhengchun blocked Liu Shangyang's way, squeezed out a smile and said, Don't be nervous. I'm not here to settle an old account with you today. But Liu Xianyang interrupted the words of the son of the Liu family. Come back. The good dog will not stand in the way. Let me go. Liu Jingchun's face was embarrassed. He forced a smile and said, Liu Xianyang, I really have something to discuss with you this time. Last time, you ran away without waiting for us to finish our sentence. It's not good. You should listen anyway. Listen to the conditions I gave here, right? Seriously speaking, we two buddies don't know each other. There is no need to be so stiff. Me and those guests are very sincere. Liu Xianyang tilted his head and said sarcastically, Why? Are you still addicted to matchmaking? I'm surprised. You say that you, Liu Jingchun, is the grandson of the richest family in our town? Why do you like to give it to others? An outsider is a dog's leg. Liu Jingchun's face was ashen, but he still had to maintain the smile on his face. The whole person looked very funny, almost pleading. Liu Xianyang, as long as you ask, no matter what you want, they will try their best to satisfy you, such as copper coins. Or let's talk about the amount. How about it? For example, 50 guan. Even a guan. I can also help you bargain. 200 guan. This will allow you to buy half a house on our Fulu Street gone. Liu Xianyang stared at the eyes and face of the person in front of him and said contemptuously, 200 kangaroos? Are you sending the beggars? Are you still sincere? I advise you to stop fooling around with me. I still have to go about my business. You go away. At the corner outside Mud Bottle Alley, a little girl doll carved in pink and jade was riding on the shoulders of a burly old man, and a boy in a red robe was held by the woman. With a sullen look, he said in the language of his hometown, Is this Liu family too stupid? What's the use of it? The woman shook her head and smiled softly. To be kind to others? You must know how to fight against others, negotiate business, and make the most of your profits. You should, like Liu Jingchun. First test, the bottom line of the other party's psychological price. The child wondered. Doing business with these native pariahs also requires such trouble. The woman smiled and said, Human nature is complex. People are dark, and they are not based on the level of cultivation. Even if people in small places are short-sighted, they are not all fools. If you think this way, sooner or later, you will suffer. The child snorted. Mother is very familiar with people's hearts. Why don't you come out and talk directly? The woman explained patiently. Look at our clothes. No matter which store you go to buy things, as long as you are a little shrewd seller, you can't help but slaughter customers. The child sighed. It's just too uncomfortable for us to be so twisted. The woman squatted down, held the child's cheeks with both hands, looked at the face that resembled his father, and said sternly, Remember, cultivating the mind is also one of the practices. Cultivating strength in good times and cultivating heart in adversity are indispensable. The child shook his head, broke free from the woman's hands, and said angrily, It's annoying to come back to this empty logic again. The woman was a little helpless, but she did not continue to teach the truth in earnest and sincere. She only felt that her children were talented and strong, and she had two family backgrounds as backers, so there was still a long way to go. Although her temperament was a little paranoid and gloomy, but it can be simmered slowly, and pulling the seedlings to encourage growth is the biggest problem. Listening to the boring conversation in the alley, the girl was a little worried. Grandpa Baiyuan, if that person is unwilling to sell things, what should we do? The old man with his hands and knees like a monkey smiled. Then let him die. The old slave is here to deal with the worst situation. Otherwise the money will be lost. There is not even a sound. But the safety of the young lady will be a little troublesome at that time. And it is estimated that it will be entrusted to the Song family or the Li family, aside from other things, if he kills someone. Although the old man will be expelled from the country by the sage, it would be considered as throwing a pebble into the water compared to a silent blow. And it would be a bit of a splash. It's just that the old man will never make such a decision unless it is a last resort. After all, no matter how important the sword is, and Zhenyang Mountain is regarded as a treasure, it is far inferior to the longevity avenue of this young lady on his shoulders. At least for the elderly, that is the case. There are 4 surnames and 10 clans in the town, headed by the Liu family. But if it is placed outside, on the contrary, it is actually the Liu family who is at the bottom, originating from a dynasty dominated by the Liu family, which was destroyed by the joint efforts of the 2 frontier armies of Dali, is already in jeopardy. On the other side of the alley, Liu Xianyang listened to Liu Jingchun talking about high officials, rich wealth, and beautiful women. He was very annoyed at Song Jixin, who had fallen out of the bookcase. He stepped forward and pointed at Liu Jingchun's nose. That armor is the ancestral heirloom of my Liu family, and it has nothing to do with money. Even if you let me move to your house today, from now on you, Liu Jingchun, calls my grandfather every day, and I'm too lazy to care about you. The surname is Liu. Listen, is it clear? Liu Jingchun, who was standing alone at the mouth of the clay bottle alley, stared at the slut in front of him. Previously, he served as a lobbyist over the covered bridge, blocking Liu Xianyang's way to the blacksmith shop, but he didn't get a good job. He returned to the house on Fulu Street. Grandpa had entertained those high-ranking guests and quietly called him to the secret room. Didn't say any harsh words. Didn't say any big words about the family's great cause. Just pointed at the corpse under the white cloth. Zheng Chun. Grandpa has no other requirements. Just hope that your brother will not die. I hope that on the first 7 days, you have already walked out. The town. Just take a look at the scenery outside for him. Liu Jingchun's eyes suddenly became wet, and he choked and trembled. Liu Xianyang, I beg you. Okay. Liu Xianyang was stunned. This young man in brocade clothes and jade food became more and more vulnerable and helpless. His lips trembled, and he couldn't help crying. Okay, I'll kneel down for you, and I'll admit you wrong. Okay. Plop! Lu Zhengchun knelt firmly on the mud floor of Mud Bottle Alley and began to kowtow. The boy has gold under his knees. The young man kowtowed unequivocally, banging loudly. At the base of the outer wall of Mud Bottle Alley, the little girl gently kicked the old man's chest, thinking about which mountain peaks she had seen along the way, and which one to choose to move back to her hometown. The boy gloated at the misfortune, and asked casually, "Mother, did this man surnamed Lu lose his mind? Are we really going to leave the town with a lunatic in the future? How embarrassing is that?" The woman looked complicated, thinking of many strange people and strange things she had witnessed with her own eyes. She hesitated to speak, and finally shook her head and said, "No way." Liu Xianyang was at a loss. Even if the tall boy broke his head, he could not have imagined that Lu Zhengchun would do such a thing. The eldest grandson of the wealthiest portal in a small town just knelt at his feet and kowtowed. Liu Xianyang's face was tangled. At this moment, the straw shoe boy, who had been observing Liu Xianyang and Lu Zhengchun, suddenly pulled his sleeve and shook his head gently at him. Liu Xianyang couldn't bear it in his heart. This is too outrageous. Chen Ping'an's eyes were firm and self-evident. The tall and carefree young man is already showing signs of softening his heart. But in the eyes of the black-clothed girl, the straw shoe boy, who was a bad guy, seemed extremely hard-hearted at the moment. Chen Ping'an's intuition told him that if Liu Xianyang agreed to this deal before Lu Zhengchun knelt down, he might suffer at most, but his life would be safe. But now Liu Xianyang has fallen into the predicament he encountered before. At that time, if Mr. Qi hadn't intervened, his fate would have been to kill Fu Nanhua and then be killed, either from Yunxia Mountain or from Old Longcheng. What's more deadly is that, according to the rules that Ning told him, if Lu Zhengchun himself is from a small town, if he or the Lu family wants to kill Liu Xianyang, Mr. Qi will most likely be out of control. Chen Ping'an's mind changed, and while Lu Zhengchun was still kowtowing desperately, he lowered his voice and said to Liu Xianyang, "If you really can't, just pretend to agree to him. Let's see Master Rune first, and we'll talk about it when you are accepted as an apprentice." Liu Xianyang nodded and said to Lu Zhengchun, "Dude, you'd better get up first. Get up and talk. You're so fucking neat. What a business." Lu Zhengchun didn't get up. He raised his head. The red and swollen forehead was covered with mud. Liu Xianyang said helplessly, "But you need to go back first, make a good sum with them, and negotiate a fair price. Don't fool me anymore. I'm not a fool. What 200 copper? For that copper can. Not to mention whether I will lose money or not. When you go to Grandma's house, don't you just say that those noble people don't think it's cheap?" Lu Zhengchun got up slowly and said with a smile, "That's the reason. As long as you're willing to let go, Liu Xianyang, I'll be your brother from now on." Lu Zhengchun, "It doesn't matter if you recognize me or not. I recognize you anyway." Liu Xianyang walked over, hooked his shoulders with Lu Zhengchun, walked towards the alley together, and comforted, "Old Lu, I will take my brother to enjoy happiness together in the future. When the deal is negotiated, I should treat you to a drink. Good wine." Lu Zhengchun wiped his forehead and smiled happily. "It's not easy to drink. What's so difficult about it? And I'm here to invite you. How can I make you spend money? Let's just say that. Otherwise, brother, I'll be angry." Liu Xianyang laughed and said, "I know that you are a kind person, Lao Lu, and it's not wrong to mix with you in the future." Chen Ping'an followed behind the two of them, leaning slightly to the side of the alley wall, staring at the movement on the other side of the alley. The man in white robe brought Song Jixin, a young man, to the back hall of the superintendent's office under the lead box of the elderly steward. The steward said that Mr. Li, who came from afar, waited here for half an hour, and said that he would leave for the school to visit a Confucian elder. Song Changjing didn't say a word about this, just asked, "The assassin who died in the alley, did you find out which party's chess piece?" The steward hesitated. Song Changjing frowned and said, "Huh." The old man hurriedly bent down and said in fear, "It's the Song family on Fulu Street." Song Changjing sneered, "I don't know how to give this king a little surprise." The old man was sweating profusely. Song Jixin was silent. His eyes were burning. Inside the school, Qi Jingchun put down the book gently, turned to look. There was a handsome young man standing by the door, wearing a high-ranked Confucian shirt, smiling but not saying a word. Qi Jingchun's face was calm and unsmiling. In the small town, a bald man in strange clothes, walking barefoot and looking withered, came to the iron lock well, looked at the deep well, folded his hands, closed his eyes and said softly, "One bowl of water in the Buddha's view, 180,000 insect." Outside the town, on the top of a mountain, someone stood on the thick branch of a towering ancient tree, overlooking the outline of the town, with a tiger talisman hanging from his waist and a long sword on his back. Beyond this place, on a long road sloping upwards that seemed to reach the sky, surrounded by clouds and mists, there was no scenery in sight. There was a young Taoist nun, Huang Guan, riding a white deer and slowly ascending the heights. Next to her was a Taoist priest with a face like a crown of jade. His steps were light and smooth, like running clouds and flowing water. There were two big fish with long beards, one red and one green, lingering and swimming around him. The soldiers of Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism, the three religions, are about to gather in the town, in the blacksmith shop by the stream on the south side of the town. The father and daughter forged iron, and sparks splashed like a splendid rain of fire. The man held the sword embryo and said to the ponytail girl who was swinging the hammer, "Don't go to the town during this time." The strength of the girl's hand immediately weakened a lot, and she felt that all her strength had slipped away with the snacks in the town. The man laughed angrily, promising. The girl turned her grief and anger into strength, and slammed it hard on the red sword. Under the shining sparks, the girl came into the world like a god of fire. After Liu Xianyang and Chen Ping'an walked out of the clay bottle alley, they found two groups of people standing on the left and right. The little girl riding on the neck of the burly old man, and the arrogant boy in bright red robes standing beside the graceful woman. When Liu Xianyang walked through it, he was poised, and in the eyes of the white-haired old man, he had the demeanor of a general. After Lu Zhengchun said goodbye to the two, he tremblingly stayed where he was, and reported cautiously. Liu Xianyang suggested that the immortal masters give a suitable price, and next time he will reluctantly part with his love and sell the heirloom. The woman looked at the white-haired old man in Zhengyang Mountain and asked with a smile, "What do you think of Senior Ape?" The old man thought for a while, and said solemnly, "There are only 3 things. Before that, according to what Liu Xianyang said, giving him a monstrous wealth is that Zhengyang Mountain can give this young man the identity of a true disciple of the Mountain Sect. Other than that, in addition, I will privately borrow a magic weapon from him for a period of 100 years. As for your Shu family in Qingfeng City, you can do it yourself." The woman was shocked and said, "The true identity of Zhengyang Mountain is already extremely honorable, and the senior ape has to come up with a magic weapon. Could it be that this young man surnamed Liu is still a cultivation genius who was leaked by a porcelain buyer at the age of 9? The old man turned a deaf ear and just smiled at the little master. There are many shops in the town, each with its own origins. The young lady can stroll around, and maybe she will be able to pick up leaks." The little girl shouted, "Drive, drive with childlike innocence." And the old man, the chief worshipper of Zhengyang Mountain, laughed and started jogging, like a mountain moving. The boy smiled and said, "Zhengyang Mountain is really majestic." The woman motioned for Lu Zhengchun to go back to the house first. She took her son to walk on the street at will, and explained the origin to him. In addition to the ordinary mountaineering main road in Zhengyang Mountain, there is also a special kendo, which has been passed down to this day, has opened up 6 paths to the top, which means that there have been 6 genuine Taoist swordsmen in Zhengyang Mountain. The boy sneered and said, "What's the use of the old yellow calendar? How many years does it take to eat the old instincts?" The chi cultivators from all sides who can come into the town, even if they are better than our later batches, every family whose ancestors have never been richer. The woman held the child's hand and said with a smile, "Then do you know that in the last 100 years, 2 brand new kendos are about to reach the top of Zhengyang Mountain? That little girl the same age as you is amazing because she can on the top of the sword, where the sword energy is vertical and horizontal. It is easy to advance and retreat, and the length of stay is not inferior to that of the ancestors of Zhengyang Mountain." The boy was stunned for a while, then stopped and said extremely annoyed, "Since that stupid girl has such a good life, why didn't you tell me earlier? Mother, I won't fight her all the way and make her okay. Just contradict me. If you let me marry her as a daughter-in-law in a few years, and then take advantage of the situation to form a Taoist partner, wouldn't it be a great benefit to our Qingfeng City?" The woman looked at the beautiful face that was still childish, full of anger, like a young tiger. She smiled instead of anger. "You and that little girl are both great practitioners who are expected to ascend to the upper 5 realms, so your marriage line will be more complicated and changeable, and you will do it on your own and deliberately, but it will not be beautiful. Do you really think that the girl now just hates you wholeheartedly?" The boy frowned and said, "Otherwise." The woman said softly, "Let's go with the flow." The boy suddenly said solemnly, "Mother, I don't like the guy behind Liu Xianyang. At first glance, I don't like it very much." The woman asked curiously, "Why is this?" The child thought for a moment and replied, "This guy is a bit strange. He is different from Lu Zhengchun, who understands everything, and Liu Xianyang, who doesn't understand everything. Also, I especially hate his eyes." The woman just thought it was her son and started to be childish. So she persuaded, "In the small town, you can't do whatever you want, but you want to think about the fate of everyone here after the collapse of the world. Do you feel much more comfortable in your heart?" The child nodded, and subconsciously repeated the words when he first saw the straw shoes as a teenager. And, after leaving the town, Chen Ping'an and Liu Xianyang soon saw the covered bridge, and Liu Xianyang asked casually, "You said that Song Jixin, his father, why did he want to build this covered bridge? What happened to cover the old stone arch bridge? I heard that the stone bridge was not demolished. It was like wearing a piece of clothing. I don't know if it will be hot in summer." In the end, the tall boy was amused by himself. On this end of the covered bridge hangs a plaque with gold characters. A 4-character plaque that I don't know who wrote it. When the 2 teenagers walked up the steps, Liu Xianyang stomped a few feet and said mysteriously, "Old man Yao once told me that there was something strange under the steps, saying that when the covered bridge was just built, there was a night in the middle of the night here. Song Jixin's father ordered people to dig a big pit here and bury a large porcelain pot as tall as a person. Are you afraid?" Chen Ping'an said angrily. What's there to be afraid of? The two walked into the shady covered bridge, and Liu Xianyang said in a low voice, "Do you think it's because of the deep pool under the bridge that more than a few people have been drowned? And you need to invite a monk and a Taoist priest to do the trick." Chen Pingyan never said anything about ghosts and gods. Liu Xianyang lost interest when he could not get an answer. This newly built wooden covered bridge still has a faint smell of wood and lacquer. The wood of the main beams and pillars is all felled from the deep mountains and old forests that have been banned for countless years. It is extremely difficult to transport them out of the mountains. The water level of the creek that runs along the mountain is usually not high, and it is far from enough to float the huge wood. We have to choose the time of heavy rain. The mountain road is muddy and slippery. If you are not careful, you will fall into the flood. It is extremely dangerous. Fortunately, there was no such time. The young and strong people fell into the water and died. Some people say that it was the trip to transport the wood out of the mountain. Qi Jingchun, the master of the school, personally went to help and taught people how to operate. Therefore, it was thanks to Mist He that everything was safe. When they reached the steps of the covered bridge on the north side, Liu Xianyang suddenly sat down on the huge long strip of bluestone, and Chen Pingyan had to squat beside him. Liu Xianyang smiled and asked, "If it wasn't for me, would you and Song Jiksen become very good friends?" Chen Ping shook his head and said, "Maybe the relationship is better, but it's not much better." Liu Xianyang asked curiously, "Why? You two neighbors are about the same age." To be honest, Song Jiksen likes to drop bookcases, and his speech is ugly. But he doesn't seem to have done anything that hurts the world. Are you a good temperament? Why not? Chen Pingyan smiled and said, "Don't talk about this. When we arrive at the blacksmith shop, don't be fooled. If you can keep your treasure armor, it depends on whether you can become Master Ruin's apprentice." I know. Chen Pingyan. To be honest, your temper that likes to babble. You really have to change it in the future, or you will be annoying to death. Liu Xianyang fell back, resting the back of his head on the top steps of the covered bridge, looking at the blue sky, and said, "You followed Old Man Yao very far and climbed very high mountains. How far can you see the scenery?" "What?" Chen Pingyan pulled out a piece of licorice, dusted off the dust, and chewed it in his mouth. He said vaguely, "The farthest time. It should be the year before the new year. I went back and forth with Old Man Yao about a 10-day period. The top of the Forbidden Mountain went around a dozen or so, and finally came to a very strange mountain, so high that you might not believe it. In the end, Old Man Yao and I finally reached the top of the mountain, and as a result, Liu Xianyang waited for a long time. But he didn't wait for the next text. He turned his head and smiled and said, "If you didn't poop and poop like this, you just lifted the crotch." Chen Pingyan was a little sentimental and said softly, "You know, Old Man Yao has a very bad impression of me, and he almost never told me the truth. And he was unwilling to teach me the real skill of firing porcelain. Every time I went into the mountains, Old Man Yao didn't love me. Talking, often from entering the mountain to returning to the dragon kiln, together. There are actually not a few words, but after reaching the top of the mountain, the Old Man Yao was probably in a good mood, so he said more, saying, 'Let me see there, it's okay to see the scenery. Don't talk too much after going down the mountain. You should bury your head in your work. Just play tricks, and it will be shameful even if you leave the town in the future.'" Liu Xianyang comforted him. "It's not that I said good things to Old Man Yao. He doesn't like you, but he doesn't hate you either. He has a bad temper with everyone, so he's a little better on my side." Chen Pingyan nodded and said, "So in my heart, I have always been grateful to Old Man Yao." Liu Xianyang suddenly said angrily, "After so much talk, you haven't said what you saw." Chen Pingyan stretched out his finger and pointed to the east. "The mountain we climbed is already very high, but when I looked at the top of the mountain, there was another mountain in the far east. It was even higher. I couldn't tell how high it was." Liu Xianyang scolded and said, "Isn't it just seeing a high mountain? I fucking thought you saw an immortal flying through the clouds and driving the mist." Chen Pingyan thought for a while and said with longing, "Maybe there are gods on that mountain." Liu Xianyang smiled and asked, "Chen Pingyan, do you think gods also need to eat and drink?" Chen Pingyan rubbed his chin. "It would be a shame if the gods were going to shit too." Liu Xianyang slapped Chen Pingyan on the head with a slap, then stood up and ran. "This is not a fairy. It's shit on your head." Liu Xianyang's attack was neither light nor heavy. This time, Chen Pingyan was a little dizzy, and he didn't even think about chasing the tall boy. After getting up, he said to himself, "Thunder, are the gods sleeping and snoring? It shouldn't be a fairy peeing, then we are too miserable." Chen Pingyan quickened his pace and quickly caught up with Liu Xianyang. After playing around, I finally came to the blacksmith shop by the stream. 7 or 8 yellow mud houses and huts have been built. In Chen Pingyan's eyes, these are huge sums of copper coins. There are also a large group of small-town teenagers and young adults who are digging wells. Most of their peers are apprentices of the dragon kiln, like Liu Xianyang. After losing the porcelain rice bowl rewarded by the emperor, they can continue to make iron rice bowls in the blacksmith shop. Good luck. However, according to Liu Xianyang, most of these helpers are part-time workers who do chores. Master Ruin said that he only accepts a few disciples at most, and the rest become long-term workers at most. Liu Xianyang waved his hand and said, "You wait here. I'll go say hello to Master Ruin and see if I can show you the scene of blacksmithing. If you see the appearance of his daughter hammering the iron, I promise to scare you to death." Chen Pingyan stood there and did not move around at will, looking around. There are already 7 wells in prototype form, And there are still real racks and fences at the wellheads. Some wellheads are constantly being drilled with dustpans on their heads. Looking at the busy people digging wells, Chen Ping'an habitually squatted down, picked up a handful of soil, and slowly rubbed his fingertips. It is relatively moist to the touch, but it is actually not water-based soil. On the contrary, it is fire-like soil. But it belongs to the last type of fire-like soil. According to Old Man Yao, this is called fire soil flowing in July, and the soil properties will automatically change, turning to warm and cool, not too dry, strong plasticity. And this means that when reinforcing the well wall, it is not easy to collapse, which is a good thing, obviously. The blacksmith, Master Ruin, is definitely not a layman, even if he is not an expert in digging wells. It's just that Chen Ping'an didn't quite understand what to do with so many wells in such a big place. Chen Ping'an turned his head to look in the direction of the stream and grinned. Now, in the eyes of the boy with straw sandals, this unnamed stream is a treasure trove of gold, silver, and copper coins. It's just that after touching the snake gallstone tonight, Chen Ping'an will secretly go to Mud Bottle Alley and go to the bottom of his big water tank to dig something according to the whispers before taking care of Can out of the town. At that time, Gusan walked on fire and didn't say anything, only said that it was his baby, and even his mother didn't know where the things were hidden by him. When Chen Ping'an thought of the slug, he wanted to laugh. In the past, Chen Ping'an was a follower behind Liu Xianyang's buttocks. He followed Liu Xianyang to catch fish, snakes, and dig birds' nests. After Chen Ping'an became a teenager, he also had a small follower behind him. For the helpless youth with straw sandals. One is his elder brother and the other is his younger brother. One needs his repayment. The other needs his care. So after so many years, Chen Ping's life has been very hard, but not hard.